onboarding with priority matrix. But the kind of overarching theme from today all the way through tomorrow's session and also on Wednesday is going to be how priority matrix can support your organization through growth. So, if you're at a company right now that's currently growing or has plans to grow in the next 6 months to a year, this would be a fantastic time to bring on Priority Matrix for several reasons. But one of the most common use cases we see with the system is using Priority Matrix for new employee onboarding. So, for those of you on the webinar today who may have recently gone through an onboarding as a new employee, or you can think back to a time when you were new to an organization and you had to go through those multiple steps of onboarding, kind of think to yourself, how did that go? Was it overwhelming? Did it make sense? Was there any way to communicate challenges with your leadership? And oftentimes, those can be the biggest challenges that people see. So when it comes to common challenges that I see in terms of onboarding systems, they look a lot like limited input from departments to influence the culture of the overall organization. So, maybe HR has a really good grasp on the culture of the organization, but from our perspective here at Affluence, each person in each department definitely has a really important voice in terms of culture and how they want these new employees to kind of take that on. So although each department may not have the bandwidth to contribute heavily, having that opportunity to collaborate across teams and departments when it comes to putting together new onboarding can be really important. We've also seen it to be a challenge when it comes to updating onboarding procedures and processes. Maybe something is working great for a couple of months, but now there's been a change in the protocol, change in the organization's goals and culture and overall fit. And while you need to make a couple updates, that can be really challenging if you don't have a flexible and collaborative onboarding solution that you're currently using. On the flip side, so after that onboarding system is already set up and good to go, as these new employees do go through the onboarding protocols and procedures, it can be really challenging for employers to see the progress of how the employee is doing with these new onboarding phases. Lastly, it can also be really overwhelming with the amount of information shared as a new employee going through these systems. So these are challenges that are pretty much from start to finish, all the way from the internal aspect of the organization setting up the onboarding process, all the way through the finishing final product of the new employer going through it, and being involved with their leadership at the same time. So hopefully that resonates and makes sense to all of you. If you have anything else you want to add with previous challenges you faced, either creating onboarding or going through an onboarding system, I would love to hear those thoughts from you and that feedback. So with all of that being said, how does Priority Matrix actually help organizations when it comes to setting up and going through onboarding processes? Priority Matrix is an incredibly collaborative tool which allows your department and your team to collaborate really seamlessly with other departments. So let's think of the example. Let's say I'm in a sales position at a different company, and I'm looking to put together a new onboarding for a new salesperson that we're bringing on. But, I actually do want input from leadership, from HR, from other teams to make sure that the culture and the goals are reflected correctly. Priority Matrix makes it really quick and easy to get that input. Priority Matrix is also such a flexible system that if something changes down the line and we want to make changes, it's not a big deal. It's really easy to get in there and make any modifications that we need to do. Again, kind of going to the flip side of that perspective, since it is such a collaborative and easy to use solution with a lot of visibility, as the new employees are going through the system, the employer can very easily see the progress updates and the questions coming through directly through the Priority Matrix onboarding system. And lastly, when it comes to, kind of filtering down what we need new employees to see right off the bat, most likely on day one of their first onboarding, you don't want them to see all 10 different phases they have to go through, because it can definitely be very much overwhelming to see all that information up front. And so Priority Matrix does provide a couple different options to, basically filter and sort what you want to show these new employees right up front. Using Priority Matrix templates is definitely a very, very common use case to streamline processes and procedures, and we'll look at that today. And so the tips for kind of getting started setting up your own onboarding process. First and foremost, we always suggest to kind of create a rough outline of onboarding projects that you might want to be using. And of course, these, onboarding ideas don't have to be coming from scratch. Maybe you've used other systems and you liked the layout and you liked the process and the phases that were in it, but there were some barriers that made you decide to choose a different system overall. Feel free to take ideas from other places and just put it into the structure of Priority Matrix. So create that rough outline. And then when you're ready, you can share these projects with your teammates for feedback, whether it's people internally on your team or people, again, in different places of the organization. Share those projects with them and easily get feedback. And once you're ready, you can finalize these templates. And then lastly, you can use project and item types to build the onboarding phases. Again, deciding what you want to show the new employees on the first day, the second day, so on and so forth. And then once you have these templates perfectly set up, you basically have this new onboarding process that's good to go. It can be used time and time again without having to spend too much time modifying them. So that's my little introduction for you all today. We will transition now into looking at the live demo portion for the session. So at this point, if you all have any questions, I would love to answer those for you. Again, drop them into the chat, or I can take you off mute and I'm happy to answer them that way. Okay, perfect. I'll pop that chat open just in case we see something coming through. But until we see a question come up, we can kind of push on here and keep exploring the rest of this live demo. So for the next 10 to 15 minutes or so, we'll take a look at the actual Priority Matrix app. This is where a lot of questions come up, so don't hesitate to ask them. Would love to answer all of these for you. So what we're going to be looking at today is my Priority Matrix running through the Teams application. So if you haven't installed already into Teams, you can do so just by going to Apps. And then you can type in Priority Matrix and get us installed there. So I have filtered here just a couple of projects that I'm going to use for the examples. And we'll also touch on how you can use these filtering options, of course, to, again, decide what you want to show your new employees right off the bat. But kind of starting from the beginning, which would be, how do I actually create this onboarding process, which we'll then use for new employees? So, kind of starting with the basics, when you click on Add Project, that's going to give you the option to either create a brand new blank project, where you could call it, new onboarding ideas. And like we talked about, you can kind of start to structure out the steps and the information that you need to share with these new employees. In this example, I have pre-created templates that I've actually made for myself. So if I keep scrolling down, you'll see that we have a client onboarding and an employee onboarding template. I'm going to show you what these look like in just a moment. And I'm also going to show you how you can save templates. So we'll go ahead and we'll click on blank project, and then we'll just say new employee onboarding ideas. All right. Oops, one more typo there. Perfect. So when we hit add project, again, this is just kind of the starting steps of getting this onboarding up and running. So I can create this kind of shell, if you will. And then if there's anybody on my team who's going to be working on this kind of conceptual design with me, I can simply just add them to the project. What we can do next is maybe in the notes, we just say ideas for new onboarding, add steps you think are important. lots of typos in there. Let's see if I can get all those tightened up here. One more typo. Okay, perfect. So this would be the place where you can just simply say, hey, here's why I created this project. It's just going to be kind of the shell for the onboarding ideas. From there, you can go in and you can say, okay, so I think step one, the new employee needs to understand culture. And then maybe we have a few employee testimonials in there, some fundamentals as to what the company is built on, things like that. Maybe we'll say step two, getting a little more serious, we need to get our logins for new systems so they can actually start playing around with the tools that they have access to. Things like that. Again, so the idea is just to kind of think, hey, what are all the things that new employees definitely need to understand, within their first day or maybe week of onboarding. So we talked about getting feedback from people inside your team or on other departments. And again, that comes into play just as soon as you add them to the project. And now you could maybe go to the culture one and assign this to, somebody in the HR department and say, hey, can you shed some light on what you want to say for culture onboarding? Maybe this has to do with paid time off, holidays, leadership goals and things like that. And now this person that I assigned it to can very easily just comment back to me and let me know their thoughts. And then we're, hopefully in alignment with what we want to do for step one. So again, this is the building process. We're putting our ideas down and we're collaborating with our teammates and with people on other teams as well. Fast forward, maybe a couple of days, couple of weeks, and this project should hopefully be full with a bunch of really great ideas and steps for how you want to go about this onboarding. Once you're like, okay, that looks great. I'm really happy with the ideas that we have. What I would suggest doing is building a new project and calling it, final, or we'll say employee onboarding, and then we'll say final. So then the idea would be to take those, the collaboration aspects and the finalized steps that for sure you want to have in this project for onboarding and list all of them out. So I'm going to go to my onboarding example that I already created. Let's see, I don't think that was it. Just so you guys can kind of see, how we see organizations kind of building out the final steps here. So week 1, week 2, week 3, and then after the first quarter, maybe they circle back and touch on these types of things. So once you have your project put together and you're happy with how everything looks, you can just go up to the top right corner and you can save project as template. So maybe you only have one onboarding project. The way that I have seen it in the past is that people will break down week 1 into a project, week 2 into a separate project. So moving forward, when you bring on a new employee, so now we're kind of switching from the preparation side, getting ideas aligned, getting the steps put into place, and we're jumping forward to, 6 months later, we have a new employee and we're ready to say, hey, Tim, let's get you started with your onboarding. That person would go into their priority matrix. And from here, there's a couple of options. You, as the manager of this person, can actually open up the onboarding project, and I'll just apply my filters again just to make it really easy. So again, you as the manager would likely go in and you would actually add that new person to the project. So we'll go down, we'll add Bella. So we'll pretend, okay, Bella's new to the organization. Oops, and I did get a little bit of feedback that the screen stopped moving. Are anybody else having challenges seeing things correctly? And thank you so much for that heads up. I will just stop the screen share really quickly. Don't worry, I'll bring it back. Just want to make sure that we can all see this. Let's see here. Okay, give me a heads up. Let me know if you're able to see that better. Hopefully it looks okay. If anybody else is struggling to see it, definitely let me know because this is a pretty important aspect here. Okay, so hopefully that looks okay. But Moving forward, the idea would be the manager goes into their priority matrix, opens up the onboarding template, and then shares it with the new employee. So then what you can do is you can go through and you could assign these to them. And you could, basically let them know, hey, here's the things that we need you to look over on week 1 of your first time at the organization. So I'll just go through and make sure that all these get assigned. Perfect. So now this new employee is getting notified through their priority matrix. And then you could say, let me know if you have questions on this one. Can be confusing at times, whatever it is. So now this new employee knows that they have a safe space to communicate with their leadership. You're able to set even more deadlines if you want them to be, kind of poignant with when they're getting things done. And again, as the new employee, when they go to views like their agenda, mine's going to look a little bit crazier because I have some other information in here, but they'd really easily be able to understand, hey, here's what, as a new employee, here's what I need to do today and tomorrow and the rest of, the next several weeks for my onboarding procedures. So what we've done is we've started from scratch. We built that onboarding template with feedback from any important departments that we would like to hear from. We've been able to create as many templates as we need to streamline this process, and onboarding likely looks different for every single role and department within the organization. So sales, marketing, HR, engineering, operations, all of those employees are going to need to know different information. So it's likely there will be different steps for onboarding for the different roles. Again, just keep creating those templates, and it makes it really easy to create them, share them, standardize those templates, and then continuously use them for every employee that you're working with. So those would be the steps for getting started. And then again, from the employee standpoint, when they step into these shoes of onboarding, again, I'll show you this idea of using tags. So when I close out of this, it's showing me all of my priority matrix projects. You can think of a new employee as saying, maybe they have 10 different onboarding projects. It's a little bit much. So you'll either want to only share project by project with them, or you can just show them how to filter down, and maybe you have something like onboarding phase 1, onboarding phase 2, and then it helps them focus on specific projects. So any questions on how organizations are using priority matrix for onboarding, or any questions on the specific functionalities that we looked at today? Let me know. This is kind of the end of my time here showing this, so I want to answer any questions. Okay, looks like we have Marcus. Marcus, give me just a moment here. Get you off mute once I can find you. Hang on, looks like we're loading. Okay, Marcus, you can go ahead and you could turn on your microphone now. So Marcus, I allowed your microphone, but you have to unmute yourself or else we can't hear you.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I can. How are you?
Good. Thank you, good. How are you? Good.
Good.
So the idea is to share item by item in that moment the new employee needs it, to not overwhelm him or her. Is that did I get that right? So you don't share all items at once, but you say, okay, in the first week I share this item, this item, this item, and then maybe in the next week I share the next items. Was that the idea behind the thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the idea that I was kind of trying to portray is maybe sharing one project at a time. So you could open up like the phase 1 onboarding project and then give access to that. And then what I did is I actually did go in and I delegated it to them. So it's kind of breaking it down in a couple of different steps of visibility. So first we share the phase 1 of onboarding. We share the whole project. And then just to make it even more clear for them, I can just assign the task to them for week 1. We won't touch on these yet. They can see it, but I'll let them know, hey, don't worry about week 2 yet. Just worry about the items that are being delegated to you. So fast forward, let's say it's week 5 and they're in their final steps of onboarding. Then what you might do is, share the phase 2 project with them and then delegate the final task that they need to get done. So you can kind of break it up by project and then even further break it down by item delegation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so how does that look for the employee then? Does the new employee gets messaged then for this specific items the moment I share them with them or make them even the owner? So what is the difference anyway by making them to the owner of the item or only share the item? Is there a difference?
Great question. Yeah. So the reason that you would go into a project that you've already shared with them and actually delegate, like I've done here in quadrant 1, is so when they go to a view such as agenda and they're like, okay, what do I need to get done today, this and tomorrow, for example, this would show them items that are assigned to them with specific deadlines. So, just kind of takes the stress off them feeling like, hey, I don't know what I need to be working on today. I don't know if I'm forgetting about something, because agenda makes it really, really easy to see what has been assigned to you and exactly when it's going to be due, versus if you simply just share the project with them, technically these items would not be owned by them, so they wouldn't show up in their agenda view.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
To make them the owner of the item brings it to their agenda and they can work down the agenda kind of. Okay, yeah, that makes
exactly.
That makes completely sense now. Yeah, great. Thank you for
Perfect. Yep, definitely. Anybody else have any other questions I can answer for you? Marcus, that was a really, really good question, and I'm sure it helped clarify a lot of things for other people here. I would be kind of curious to hear from any of you, what was your experience in the past when you came onto a new organization or, older previous companies that you've worked for? What did onboarding feel like for you? And, do you think that improving the onboarding system would make a significant difference for new employees at the organization? And what I'll do again is I'm even thinking about creating an onboarding template that I can email to all of you, because I can actually, maybe this one would be helpful. I'm not sure, because I kind of just put together off miscellaneous ideas, but I could export this for all of you, and then I could actually share the template. So then you could just import this template into your priority matrix. Let me know if that would be helpful, just to kind of help you guys get started. Or alternatively, I can just upload this template to our public templates, and then you can access all of them really easily. But with all of that being said, if we don't have any more questions, we can wrap up the session